The newly re-elected lieutenant governor is in the House.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
He withstood probably the most difficult opposition, effort in the last election, Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee, with progressive candidate, former state representative Aaron Regenberg, putting the full court press with a bunch of dough and a bunch of organization. And it was this close, but one of those elections where you say, that was an impressive win. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but really, he's such a wonk. We got to get into this stuff, and there's stuff going on. And education is his big theme for this next set of 4 years, and has been, on his resume. So we'll get to that with Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee in a second. Great to have you in. Good Wednesday evening to you. The headline from yesterday in Washington was, gosh, if you haven't seen this, just tune in to Saturday Night Live. I'm having one of those days. Saturday Night Live on Saturday. I am certain this will be the opening skit. Here's what the network had.
Less than 2 weeks before a potential government shutdown, Senator Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi were at the White House on Tuesday. The meeting was an attempt to end a long-running stalemate over the federal budget.
We wanted to have a debate with you about saying we confront some of those facts without...
You know what? We need border security. That's what we're going to be talking about, border security. If we don't have border security, we'll shut down the government.
President Trump wants $5 billion for a border wall. The Democrats are only offering $1.3 for border security.
And I am proud, and I'll tell you what, I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. The last time you shut it down, it didn't work. I will take the mantle of shutting down. And I'm going to shut it down for border security.
But we believe you shouldn't shut it down.
The unusual Oval Office argument attracted a lot of attention over on Capitol Hill, where many Republicans expressed support for the president.
I don't believe the man's bluffing. If I were playing poker with him right now and I didn't have the cards, I'd fold those rascals.
If no deal is reached, the federal government's funding will run out on December 21st, triggering a partial shutdown.
Yeah, and that will bother government employees. When a shutdown occurs, it really only affects near a quarter of the actual things that are going on with the federal government. There are necessary services and security matters and all sorts of things that happen anyway. Probably early mid-January, the citizens start to feel, the access to government, getting their questions answered, their social services taken care of, and all that kind of stuff. That's when it starts to hit the fan. We've been through this before. If you keep using the same weapon over and over again, it becomes less powerful, seems to me. I thought the Democrats sucked the president right into that one, just right into that one. This $5 billion worth of wall is not something that most Americans want. He tells you in tweets that it's already, the wall's already been built and it's been building, so to speak. Not true. And the Democrats are offering up more than $1 billion in security measures to heighten security at the border. So I don't think it was his best day, but you know what? If you're part of the base, you think he was terrific, and if you're not, you don't, because everybody looks through their own glasses on this situation, right? All right, headlines here from yesterday here in Rhode Island. This is a very, very, very important matter. The city of Pawtucket is on the brink, as far as I'm concerned, and its mayor knows it. Between Memorial Hospital, the worst fall down on leadership I've seen since I've been here in the more than 19 years that I have on the Paw Sox, and now Hasbro. Now, we've known that Hasbro is shopping around, and they had a meeting on their agenda for yesterday, they being the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President. Preceding their meeting on this matter, Don Grebian sent a help letter citing 1,500 jobs and $60+ million worth of payroll distributed over core Blackstone Valley towns that would be in jeopardy. Here was some of the response outside the meeting from the state leadership.
Just had a great meeting. The three of us met to make sure we're all on the same page, and I think I can speak for all of us that we are committed to keeping Hasbro in Rhode Island, and we want to make sure that just like they've been here for 100 years, they're going to be here for another 100 years, hiring Rhode Islanders.
The governor's done a great job taking the lead on this. I have every confidence that with her personal relationships and the collaborative government that we have, with my assistance, the Senate President's assistance, the governor's going to have all the tools and the equity to go forward and get this done on our behalf.
Obviously, we're looking to do a lot for Pawtucket, make sure they stay there. Pawtucket's taken a couple of hits lately, Memorial Hospital, so we're hoping that we can keep them, and we want to see what they have in mind and to try to help them out.
Where was the mayor's invite to the meeting about keeping Hasbro in Pawtucket? Nowhere to be found. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because I am sure that Brian Goldner, the CEO of Hasbro, has whispered in the governor's ear that he's not interested in Pawtucket, and she's not a fighter. She's a custodian now. She's going to keep one hand on the wheel as she looks for a new route. Not supposed to text and drive or look at your map and drive, but she's got another map. And I think everybody knows it. I think the speaker is coy when he says, she's good. She's good. It's like, here you go, Gov. So the question will be whether Hasbro stays in Rhode Island. I doubt it stays in Pawtucket. And the Paw Sox fall down, I think, has a lot to do with that. Because what could have been, could you imagine Hasbro on the stadium as you drove through, where hundreds of thousands of people daily taking a look at that and building a place for the millennials in a city walk around the stadium, all of that which could have been. No momentum. Let me see what the Lieutenant Governor thinks about this. We welcome him in. Congratulations on your re-election.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll talk about it a little bit at the end. It was a battle. It was a battle.
Yeah, yes. It's the price we pay for the work we like to do.
Yeah, okay. Listen, I think you've been pretty vocal on Pawtucket. Do you agree with me that the Paw Sox thing was the worst laydown the state's seen in a long time?
Yeah, I think that was a misstep for sure, and I stood with the mayor, with other mayors at Slater Park when it was first announced that we were going to have this vision for Pawtucket, renewal for economically in the downtown area. I think it was available to us, and we just didn't put it all together.
Why? Why? Why?
For reasons politically reasons you can explain, with the 38 Studios hangover, and I kept on saying this is not 38 Studios, it's not 38 Studios, this is a business that's been in business for 40 years, just happens to be in baseball, like the guy that was the baseball player that decided to get into business. So I think that was part of it. I think I can't explain it because I think it was there to be had. I talked to Don.
Tough to be lieutenant governor, I would think. Listen, people laugh at some people. Less, I think, with some of the role that you've played over time here. It's an entrepreneurial opportunity. Everybody kind of writes their own ticket as lieutenant governor. But for a guy who would like to do some take charge work, I'm sure sitting back and watching that was frustrating. You have no authority, no route to be able to actually call the shots, bang some heads around, force the issue, right? So that'd be frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Although I certainly do understand the position that I have and the role I can play on this matters, and we're going to continue to talk about Pawtucket.
Well, what about Pawtucket? Okay, so if you're going to talk about Pawtucket, what happens with Hasbro? Do you have a point of view? Are you going to?
Yeah, we should
be publicly aggressive about this.
I think that Pawtucket right now, and I've said this publicly, that the state was willing to put resources on the table on the Paw Sox, transaction. The state should continue to put that same amount of revenue. We've talked about this, Dan. And then for the right project, they should have the flexibility to kind of call the shots and say, "Yeah, we want to use those resources for that." I think that Hasbro is one of those areas that they should. Citizens went to stayed in the state, went to Johnston, and that was a good thing for Johnston. We should be looking for the next citizens to go into Pawtucket.
Do you worry do you worry about my commentary as to whether I'm right, that Hasbro more or less is fly in Pawtucket's coop, and that's probably why they didn't invite the mayor in there. You know, why bring the mayor in there one more time to disappoint Pawtucket? Why not at least show a signal that it's broader than Pawtucket, and if they can't save it for Pawtucket, at least they didn't drag him around, you know, tease him again.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying the priority is to keep him in Pawtucket, right, initially.
And you don't hear that. You don't hear that from anybody.
No, and I think that should be stated. Look,
but that
we
it's
know
not, I think, is the
in
indication.
Blackstone Valley, Dan, and we live in Blackstone Valley, and if you look at the income or the wealth that has left Blackstone Valley, and we say, oh, it's all leaving the state. No, it's not all leaving the state. It's going to South County. And if you look at the data, you can see that a good amount of that thing, which is leaving Blackstone Valley in a very difficult situation economically. We should be working as hard as we can for the benefit of the state of Rhode Island to increase per capita income in the Blackstone Valley. And Pawtucket right now is a place where it could spiral in the other direction. We should be really working hard with the mayor to make sure that per capita stays in the mix. And Hasbro is an employer, and an employer that has good paying jobs. Those belong right in Blackstone Valley. Just like when I was a mayor, CVS was talking about potentially moving out on the Caremark deal. I met with CVS. We did a 600,000 square foot expansion in northern Rhode Island, the Cumberland side. 1,000 jobs came in with the Caremark, which was one of the acquisitions maybe 10 years ago. So I think you need to step in, build the best case you can, possibly give flexibility to Pawtucket and say, hey, those resources that were on the table for the Port Sox deal are on the table right now, and they should help call the shots in terms of what the next job opportunities is for Blackstone Valley and Pawtucket.
All right, when we come back, we'll tackle education, because this guy's focused on it. Stay with us. There are coaches who believe that you go into the locker room and you hold carrots until you get performance. And then there's Bobby Knight who comes in and throws chairs and tells them the truth. I just want you to throw a chair once.
Yeah.
I just want you to throw a chair once. I want people to understand that this isn't funny, this isn't acceptable, and it's not true that our kids perform.
This isn't funny, this isn't acceptable, and it's not true that our kids can't do it. They can do it.
Be careful what you ask for. Although, past that, I don't hear a lot of high energy. You know, Rhode Island Foundation is going to put a 10-year plan together with people who reportedly are stakeholders, not elected ones. This has been a big thing for you for a long time.
Is this the chair?
That's the chair.
I'm not throwing it.
Good. Good. I don't know that I could take a second one.
No, I think I have a history of throwing chairs, but, you know, more of, you know.
What's your overall take on the RICAS performance versus MCAS, and what the state's reaction has been to it?
So it's not new news. And I think that anybody who's taken it as new news is really ignoring the history that we've had. I mean, we've been at this for well over a decade, me and myself and partners that are really interested in moving public education forward in the state of Rhode Island. So we've known for years, even in the 2008 report that we did to set up, to set up the Merrill Academy, the Hispanic Learning Gap was in there, the gap between Rhode Island and Massachusetts. This is 2008. And if you go back and look at anything, so I think the most important point there, this is not new news. It may be new news to the commissioner because he's been here for 3 years plus, but it's not new news to the people in the state.
Well, I give the commissioner credit because at least he forced everybody to the table to be able to get a test that would be comparable, right, so that you could reset. What bothers me a lot are the headlines that suggest that one town or another has moved up or leads the rankings in Rhode Island. It's like saying you've won the losers bracket. Yeah. And sorry, it just is what the truth is. I'd like to see Barrington, rather than comparing itself to the rest of the state, compare themselves to Belmont, Mass, where they're 15 points behind, but the sociographics are the same in the towns. East Greenwich to Long Meadow. I mean, that kind of same thing. I think, first of all, do you agree with me that we need to get angry about this, that emotion has to drive a solution?
Emotion is a big part of this. My history in Cumberland of changing the direction of public education in Cumberland was exactly that. The people who when I infused myself into the mix, were opening an office for children, youth, and learning, still operating today, helping kids learn how to read, math,
I don't want
music.
you to go slowly, but I want you to repeat. We don't have a
Yes.
lot of time, but I
Yes.
want you to repeat. You have an Office of Youth, Children.
Yeah, Office of Children, Youth, and Learning. It's the mayor's office. It's a learning, an academic, a day-to-day activity, helping young kids learn.
I don't know that there's a duplicate in the States.
I don't think there's a duplicate in the country.
In the country?
I'm not aware of one. Where the municipality gets into real education, and so we did that in Cumberland.
What year did you start that?
We started that in 2007.
Guess what? Cumberland moved up the ranks significantly on this RICAS test. I can't draw the line directly to that effort, but Cumberland is an interesting place because they fight you all the way.
They fought us on that office.
And they continue to resent that you put that office in. Yet, the competition, the turn to Blackstone Valley Prep, the charter school, and we'll talk about that under the mayoral academies, has caused them to either pout or perform. And to their credit, I think they've done both.
So the people who didn't like what I was doing got motivated, and they got emotional about it. And the people who liked what I was doing got motivated, and they did something about it. So we actually signed a declaration of education in our community, and I had a public forum around that. So this is a community effort. All the factors that have to do with leading up to a good public education, everybody should be involved, and that's true. But I would go back a little bit on that. It's good that we're comparing direct to Massachusetts right now, but this is not the first metric that we've had with a direct comparison to a same test that was given from Massachusetts and Rhode Island. It's been done before. And I believe in the POC test that was one of them. So the notion that somehow we didn't have this information before and now we're going to act, out of urgency today.
No, but I mean
crazy.
this test. I mean the very acronym is almost duplicate. So it's the same test.
Yeah, my point is that's good. It is, and that's good, and I support that. My point is that this is not the first time we've had an apples to apples comparison between Rhode Island and Massachusetts, or in fact around the whole country, right? So we've had this information for years. Myself and other municipal leaders and other leaders have been at this for well over a decade, and I think that gets lost in the shuffle.
Well, what also was lost in the shuffle, I think, was some scores for the mayoral charter schools. And when we come back, we'll show you. You might be pretty surprised. Stay with us. So yeah, Rhode Island's overall performance in grades 3 through 8 with the RICAS test versus MCAS was 15 to 20 points behind Massachusetts, depending on English or math. But here's something that you ought to take a look at. The Blackstone Valley Prep, which was a dream at the beginning and now is a full-fledged high school. We met the first graduating class last year, and incredible stuff. 3rd through 8th graders in English, 53.5 on the meeting and exceeding expectations, way above the state average, and in competition with some of the alleged high-performing schools in the state. And then the second one, achievement first, 80% in English, 80% at the top of Rhode Island, at the top. Blackstone Valley Prep draws from
Pawtucket, Center Falls, Cumberland, Lincoln, and that's the blend of those outcomes, right? So when we compare directly Cumberland to Cumberland, Lincoln to Lincoln, community to community, the VP students outperform the sending districts. When we compare Hispanic, when we compare low income, we get moderate income, black, color, everyone, the metric is higher.
Achievement First draws from?
Achievement draws primarily from Providence, but they do have a pool that comes from Cranston, Warwick, and North Providence.
Okay, so the numbers kind of speak for themselves. What's the moral of that story?
So I think what it says is in 2008, when we had a joint committee talking about mayors getting involved in public education, we were told that mayors didn't know how to be involved with public education. I think that we pretty much have dismissed that as a criticism. But the biggest criticism at the time was you had the NEA, the AFT, and at the time the League of Charters testified that certain kids could not learn based on their mom's education, based on the demographic, basically based on their address and their income levels. So we pretty much have shown that no, we can set our standards a lot higher, our expectations can be a lot higher.
They say that the kids that come to these charter schools, while drawn by lottery, at least their parents put them into the lottery, and so their parents have more of an investment in their kids' future.
Well, I think parents play a big role, but I think it's the culture of the school that develops the parents' interest by and large. And so I think that that's one of the things that both BVP and Achievement First have done a remarkable job, and you'd have to go there to see the interaction that they do develop with the families and the responsibility that they do put on the families to make sure that they know what's going on with their, with the boys and girls that are at
Mayor
Lorza
has a decision to make as to whether to add another 1,000 kids from Providence into Achievement First and build a high school and all of that. It doesn't look like he wants to pull that trigger. Isn't that disappointing?
Well, you got to, and that's one of the things that we fought very hard for. If you don't go through the full K through 12, you haven't proven out what you're trying to prove out, which is that all kids can learn if they have in the right conditions. Yeah, I think it's a lost opportunity if Achievement First doesn't get through the high school. And I, as a former mayor, I would be saying I would want to be sending. I don't care what school it is. If they're doing well, I want my students there.
There's a lot of talk from Massachusetts, and David Driscoll, the former Commissioner of Education, was on the radio with me on WPRO. I'm going to try to get him down here for the television show. And we were comparing Mass in Rhode Island and some of the reforms. When they made their big reform, they made mayors a part, or town administrators a part of the system. In fact, most communities in Massachusetts, the mayor sits as the chair of the school committee, thus connecting the two forms of local government. Is it time for us to do that here?
Well, I think governance is an important factor, and that's one of the public forums I had as a mayor in Cumberland, where we brought in somebody who used to be a superintendent and as a consultant
to talk
leadership,
about isn't it?
About the governance models.
This is about leadership. Gary Sass from Bryant the other day tweeted out, all the data indicates that state improvement in education is directly tied to a gubernatorial mission. The governor first and other leaders like mayors, lieutenant governors second. You get a half a minute. What is it about leadership, mission, tying into the emotion that we need in this state right now?
Well, I think you got to, first of all, you got to determine what you actually can accomplish, and that's why I think there's some good opportunities to open up the discussion about Central Falls, the state leadership become a municipal department under the right conditions.
You want to give the mission of education back to the town of Central Falls?
I think under the right conditions, I think that it makes a lot of sense, because I think you can reset in many ways the things that you're trying to accomplish that the Rhode Island Foundation.
But that's an example of what has to be done. That's not the big picture.
Well, I think
20 seconds on the big picture.
The big picture is that you take the small wins that you can get, add into that. If we don't run, some people would argue we only got 5,000 kids in the mayoral academies right now. What is that against 140,000 kids? No, that proof point is very important for the general public. And the other one is the emotion. I think the other opportunity is to get out, and this is what we're going to do. Basically, we're going to do a door-to-door strategy and talk to people about what's happening on the Achievement First in Providence alone, to let them know what's possible.
All right. Congratulations on your re-election.
Thanks, Dan.
Final word, and we can get back. Stay with us. Honest to God, the governor's reaction to the RICAS test was so underwhelming. Lieutenant Governor has already gone through the emotional renaissance in his own hometown, and the Mayoral Academy's performance in this state speaks for itself. We need that kind of friction, emotion, anger, competition to change this dynamic here in this state. And so far, I don't feel it. But you never know what 2019 brings. See you tomorrow on the radio on WPRO at 3 and back here tomorrow night. Good night.